Even growing up in the United States, in upstate New York, like I heard about the Battle of Tours. This was a critically important battle in Western history, in which the old story goes that if Charles Martel in 732 hadn't defeated the Muslim invaders from across the Pyrenees, then Europe would have been Islamic at that time. And that is a story that is told even, unfortunately, to this day. It's one that is still used to inspire violence. The Christchurch shooter in New Zealand who did his horrific acts was inspired by, and in fact had written Charles Martel in 732 on his weapon. The reality is much more complicated, and in fact, it's interesting in its own way, but relatively insignificant in the history of Europe, because what the Battle of Tours actually was a squabble between the Merovingian rulers with an army that was sent south by Charles Martel and the Christian ruler of Aquitaine at the time. And what had happened was basically the Merovingians the Franks wanted to extend their power south into Aquitaine. The Christian ruler of that region did not want him to do so, but ended up needing help because he had annoyed another regional ruler who had hired Islamic mercenaries. And the Islamic mercenaries were kind of raiding through the countryside. And so what happens at Tours was just kind of a relatively small kind of pitched battle between some Islamic mercenaries who had moved north and a Frankish army. And the Franks won, and then they proceeded to ignore the Muslims for the rest of their campaign and fight against the Christians in Aquitaine. And what this really shows, if you actually look at it, what's really kind of important to understand about the battle is the complex networks of affiliation, in which it was fine for Christians to hire Muslim mercenaries. It was fine for Muslims to work with Christians at the time. The real kind of lines of dissension or battle at that time were simply between different Christian rulers about who extended their authority in this region or that region. It was not in any way, shape, or form kind of the beginnings of holy war or the beginnings of any sort of kind of religious confrontation. And the sources at the time are extremely clear that that's what's going on.